Hi, everyone. First, I just want to ask you, how does it feel to be back on campus?
Well, actually, and that does sound good, doesn't it?
I know it's weird.
I am elated. The last time I was here, outside of visiting staff members that I know here and went to school with, I was here doing the same type of talk. Tons less people, though. I don't know, 10, 12, 15 years ago. I have to gauge it by my daughters because I remember they came and they were, I don't know, about this tall. And the oldest isn't much taller than that anyway. I had fun with that because I was invited by the then spinoff of the Black Cultural Society back when we were here, and Omega Psi Phi. And I got the opportunity to take a stab that Q's invited a Kappa to come and talk. So it's just great to be here.
Yeah, I'm sure. And like Chloe mentioned, you were the first Black editor-in-chief of The Pendulum and the first Black SGA president. What were some obstacles you faced by making those accomplishments?
Well, I did not or don't remember tons of obstacles. What went through my mind or at that time was being able to garner enough votes to get me over the hump. I knew I had the communities in which I hung in, and one was and I think one of the questions will get me to those communities, but I was confident in my SGA community that call it popularity or whatever, as a freshman senator, sophomore senator, and junior senator would get me some votes there. My senior year, and knowing it now, I didn't know then, I figured it was about 150 of us, so I can count on many of those votes. But at that time, I guess my senior year, 1980, there were about 2,577 students on campus, and there were 214 of us. So now I know those numbers. I didn't know them then, but I sure was counting on those 150 that I thought I had back then. And my community of athletes, they let me hang with them, though I wasn't an athlete. I played a decent game of baseball back in the day, but as my dad played in the Negro Leagues in Greensboro, but I figured I could count on them. Cal Wills and Brian Burney and Dennis Walker and E.F. Faust, Mike Hahn, Billy Doggett, my roommate, all 4 years. You know, those were shoe-in votes right there. So ironically, or not ironically, good that I had those votes because it did get me over the hump. And I overcame what, at that time, I wasn't too naive to know that, we had apathy in the student body or disinterested. I mean, who cares about student government, unless you're putting on a concert. But, those communities got me over the hump, and thankfully I won, and it was fun.
Yeah, you talk about the communities that you had while you were here at Elon. Can you talk more about the communities you had, especially because here at Elon we really value those cohort experiences?
Excellent, good question. I had probably about 3 or so communities that let me hang with them. The Black community, of course, the 214 of us, we were a close-knit family because we were, as we used to say back then, we were all we had. We were tight. I remember the snowstorm of 1979, ice or snowstorm back then. The school was telling us, if you can, go home, because we can't assure you that cafeteria workers, professors, administrators would be here, and classes are certainly canceled. But crazy us, a few of us, and especially my athlete circle, we stayed, and boy, were we crazy. We thought we were getting warm by going down to Belt Gym and getting in the pool, without realizing that we had to get out of the warm pool and walk back to the dorm in the cold. My SGA community, that's Tim Moore, who was the SGA president back in '78, Robin Moser, SGA president back in '79, and Annette Metcalf was in Robin's administration. That was my SGA community, because Robin and Tim were the ones that kept prompting me, and Annette, Bryant, there's an opportunity here. You can run for SGA president. Man, you're a shoo-in. And of course, I'm thinking, yeah, right. So they were instrumental in my SGA life, and of course my athlete community, and that's Billy Dog was my roommate back in the day, all 4 years. I mean, and even now he's still my best buddy. He was the best man at my wedding, godfather to my kids. So he played football. There's a Hall of Famer and academic All-American football standout, Brian Burney, and he's here in the back right now, and you'll probably get me because I'm pointing him out. There he is, Brian. There's a staff member that you guys have the pleasure of having worked with you, and that's Kyle Wills. Kyle is the Senior Associate Athletic Director of Budgeting and Operations here, and he's back there. So if you hear the two of them heckle them, just call security, please. There was Mike Hahn, outstanding football player. There was Eddie E. Man Faust, outstanding football player, and there was Dennis Old Man Walker. I mean, these guys were outstanding. I can remember the times that after they'd go to practice, they'd come into Harper Center cafeteria, and we'd sit at the table. I'd be sitting with them, and we'd break out into some Temptation songs, and we'd put a cup at the end of the table. Needless to say, I am not one to even be able to carry a tune right here in this hand, but it was fun, and those were my guys.
Yeah, I love that you took a lot of your community experiences and you're still connected with those people now.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool to know. And how specifically in the roles that you were in, SGA president and editor-in-chief of The Pendulum, how did you take everything that you learned from those roles into your professional life?
Well, when I decided to apply for the Pendulum position, I was prompted then by the previous editor, Kent Lyles, the advisor, Dr. Mary Ellen Priestley. I mean, she was a sweetheart, but she was always on me, telling me that it was something that I can do. I didn't have, all of the confidence probably that I should have, but I ended up with a ton, and I can't be more grateful for Dr. Priestley, Kemp, and then student services or student coordinator of student activities. That was his title, Bill Sharp. He got. That was a humongous supporter back in the day for me. So those three talked me into the Pendulum deal, or the Pendulum opportunity. That actually all started with my freshman English teacher, who used to always tell me I should consider writing for the Pendulum, because when we had papers to write, mine tended to be about sports. And she asked me you ought to consider doing that, Brian. I think it was Dr. Baines, back then. But I took that under advisement, and of course, as you can see, I did do it. The SGA position was, it was just in the words of a famous person that we all know, that's just what I do. I was student body president of my school when I was in elementary school, 6th grade. I was into student government in back then junior high school. Page High School. I was into student government all my years there. So it was just ingrained in me. I don't know how much of a leader I was, but it certainly helped me, gave me the confidence even to want to do it here, along with being pushed with my SGA community and advisors. So that got me going, especially the writing part. Writing will not knowing how it would benefit me in my career, because I didn't know what I was going to do. That was so important. The ability to write, whether you are managing people, I mean, you have employee reviews to write. You have now in this age, we didn't have it back then, but emails, and you want to make sense on those, especially to the people that it needs to make sense to. So those were important things to me. Another thing that was really, really good, and it was a blessing and not so much a disguise, was after I got in these positions, I was not aware that the pendulum position paid a stipend. I got a stipend. I mean, they're paying me to do something I like. As I was telling the young lady earlier, find something that you love and call it work, and put a little money in the plate at work. Well, I would send half home to my mother, and I'd put half in my checking account here when I was a student here. SGA, the same thing. A stipend. I couldn't believe that. So I split it right down the middle, sent half home to my mother, and I put the other half in my account here on campus or local account here. So those were, that was gravy, icing on the cake.
Well, you say you weren't much of a leader, but you certainly had to be to take on those types of big roles, and you probably did so well. And I just kind of want to pivot and talk about Black History Month. How do you go about celebrating each year, and how should we as a campus go about celebrating? We especially want to hear from you because you made history on this campus. So,
well, I actually, and I don't mean this to sound too cheesy, but Black history to me, I celebrate every day. There's something on TV, some person that you meet, somebody that you talk to, that makes you proud to be Black. Abby Phillips, CNN news analyst, smart lady, old school Donna Brazile, chaired the Gore campaign and chaired the Democratic National Committee. Smart lady, Laura Coates. I mean, these are smart people I see on TV every day, and I mean, what's not to be proud about? To be Black. I remember having to tell friends and my girls when they were younger. I would hear at times, and hopefully they were being facetious, but I don't know now. Why in the world do they pick the shortest month to let us celebrate our people? 29 whole days, 28 whole days. Well, you know what? That wasn't the choice, as I tried to explain to them. Ironically, a gentleman by the name of Carter Woodson, the second Black person to get a PhD at Harvard, started a Negro History Week in February back in 1926, where he would tout the accomplishments of Black people, or Negroes back then. It wasn't giving to, he chose that month because it had the birthdays of iconic people at that time. Abraham Lincoln, February 12th. Frederick Douglass, February 14th. That's why he chose that month. And fast forward to Gerald Ford in 1976, where he made it a month-long annual, celebration.
Yeah, I love everything that you said. And kind of just talking about your college experience here in general, if you could do anything differently, what would it be and why?
Ooh. I would take the advice of the reason we are given advisors here on campus, of Dr. Fred Watts. He was my political science advisor, and he would tell me, Colson, you don't need a business administration minor. Concentrate on political science. I mean, you're a good student in that. And had I heeded that, I would have made tons better grades, because numbers just didn't work with me. I married a young lady who was good in numbers. Went to A&T, worked for DuPont until she retired. So she's the numbers person in the family. Of course, I didn't know that back then, but I would have done differently there. I don't know. I was extremely happy as a student. So I don't know if I would change a lot of things. The stipends that I got, I may have sent the whole thing home to my mother. She's a single parent. My parents divorced when I was 10 years old. So, just the thought of her raising four kids, and I'm the oldest, and I was in college on the small salary that she had, because I did her taxes. I should have sent the whole thing home, but again, I was blessed to not have a lot of big issues. But that's not to say that there weren't issues, because there are other students that if during this month you had them come in and be able to tell their truths, it'd be probably slightly different.
Of course. And I'm so happy that we got this chance to talk with you. It's such an honor to get to speak with you and interview you. I think we're going to move on to the Q&A portion so that other people can ask you questions. It shouldn't just be me. Yeah. So do you want to come up?
Thank you again for that interview. I'm sure we got a lot out of it. So yes, as Naomi said, we are going to do question and answer. So if you have a question, I can bring you the mic and you can go ahead and ask the questions, or as I'm seeing, you can stand up to these mics and go ahead and ask your question, and they'll answer that for you.
Yeah, I think you can walk up to...
Jeff Dixon, second year here. I guess one of the big questions I have, and that's something that I think our current Elon community really needs, is community strength and community building. And something you touched about is like some of the experiences you had like with your specific communities, your SGA, your athletic community, and things like that. What are some things that like, I guess you saw in those communities that like you think really helped influence your time at Elon? Because I know here we have a strong community, but there are always ways that we can be stronger. So I guess just what did your community look like then, and how can we emulate that?
Well, historically, the black community way back in the day, religion was what kept us together. And again, I make the statement, we were all we had. The Black Cultural Society back then, they were the group, or they were the glue that held us all together. I mean, there were singings and there were, prayer opportunities. A group would go to various churches on the weekend, and the school would let us use the old Elon College bus. And I had my bus license back then, so they asked me to drive the bus. I could not sing a lick, so I wasn't about to sing with them. I was always in the congregation. And those were led by amazing students back then, Zeb and Herbie and Wes McLaughlin. Wes was defensive end on the football team. He'd bust you up on Saturday and pray for you on Sunday. So those were opportunities for us to I don't know, to know each other. As I spoke of the ice storm of '79, I mean, we got together and played spades in some of the rooms, knowing good and well the co-ed visitation back then disallowed that, and the way we even got slightly better was, is a story in itself. Presentations to the board of trustees, which is interesting. But opportunities to gather with friends, exchange concerns, help each other. Back then, and she's still a good friend of mine, Vicki Blackwell Morrow, and she and her husband they were in a car accident earlier this month, and it's pretty bad. She's doing tons better, and I'm thankful for that. But Vicki was about the only person. She was my office assistant, and she's the one that could type. Back then, it was typing. We didn't have computers, except for in a newly established resource learning center in the library back then. But Vicki could type, so she was everybody's typist. She was my office assistant. Because if I called her secretary now, she'd still choke me. And she's tons smaller than me. But she wasn't a secretary. She was my office assistant. And I was able to pay her, and I paid her every opportunity I could because she was a help in the office. So again, that type of intermingling kept us together. And it was just fun. I mean, they were amazing people then. They're amazing people now.
Thank you. It helps. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And you're an awesome singer, man.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Jeez. I don't know how they expected me to follow that. Jeez.
Hi, my name's Eliza Adams. I was just wondering, I'm also in SGA right now, and so I found it really interesting that you were managing both SGA and the Pendulum. As I understand, they're both like really big time commitments, at least now in today's age. I'm sure it was back then, but I'm wondering how you balance that and then your academics and I guess your avocation on top of that.
Well, thankfully, again, that's a good question. Thankfully, the Pendulum was my junior year, and SGA president was my senior year, so I didn't have to do them at the same time. The way they did overlap a little was that as Pendulum editor, I had to, the editor has a column, and when I was student body president or SGA president, the Pendulum editor always gave the SGA president a column, so I had to keep that writing going. Which, it was in the brain of a student back then. It was labor intensive, but I mean, it again, writing sure helped. To this day, as I speak right now.
I was gonna say, actually, my second question was, how did you use like the tools or your leadership tools that you learned at Elon in like your day-to-day life after college?
Well, back then as a student, I didn't even know I had leadership capabilities. I mean, it wasn't, you didn't think of it that way. You didn't, I didn't even think of it making history, because that wasn't even important to us back then. We just did what we liked, and we did the job that we had to do back then, and of course now, I'm sure to many of you. I mean, there were a lot of firsts back then. A lot of firsts to go to college in your family, SGA first, Pendulum first. Mary Carol Robinson was the first black homecoming queen. So there were a lot of firsts, and I'm happy that people think of it as leadership, but I guess going through the motions back then did get me to develop what I know now as decent leadership skills.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just quickly, while this young lady gets to the mic, I guess I could have waited till the end, but I'm extremely happy to be here on February 1st, because as many of you know, February 1st, 1960, the A&T freshman four, Joseph McNeil, Franklin McCain, Ezell Blair Jr., and David Richmond. I mean, those four gentlemen, as heroic as things that we've done being first here at Elon, I mean, those guys were first. I mean, they were the heroes. To take it upon themselves to sit at that lunch counter, knowing the ridicule that they would get, not knowing that they would not be killed. And not to mention, they did have support of Bennett College back then. UNCG was there. That was I mean, 62 years ago. That was just amazing. It started a move that spilled over into 55 cities and 13 states over 3 months back then. That was in 1960, so that would make me about 3 years old. I remember fast forwarding to 68, 69. My little brother and I catching the Duke Power bus in Greensboro to go downtown and pay my newspaper bill. I delivered papers. And the little money that I earned, we would go to Woolworths, 5 and dime, because money went far then. But just minus a few years from that, I would not have had that opportunity. I remember sitting at the counter in my favorite spot, if I could get the end spot, and right in front of the umbrella, they had a few umbrellas on the counter, and on the tab of each umbrella was a balloon, and the balloon was a price, anything from 1 cent to 99 cents. You popped it, and that's what you paid for a banana split, and I loved me banana splits, and I still do, as you can see. But those are history-making things. Elon, I mean, I'm so proud to be the first SGA president, first Pendulum editor, but the real heroes, Glenda Phillips Hightower, the first black student at Elon in 1963. Eugene Perry, the first black student to graduate from Elon back in 1969. These were the heroes. I mean, I had their shoulders to stand on. They didn't have any shoulders. I mean, they had the man upstairs, they had family, and they had a few supportive professors and administrators here at Elon. But they, I stand on their shoulders. They didn't have any shoulders, so they are the heroes. But I appreciate you having me here. And yes, ma'am. And I'm sorry to go off on a tangent there.
Hi, my name is Hannah. I'm a first year. And I was wondering if there was any event that you remember that Elon put on that you really, really enjoyed as a student, or that you set up in SGA that you really felt like brought the Elon community together.
Oh, yeah. the concerts. Because back then, the SGA, I mean, you're not going to believe this, but we thought we had tons of money. Our student fees were like $17, $17.50. But that was the money that went to allow us the opportunities to book bands, Hall & Oates, Little Feet, Nantucket, groups that you guys don't even know about out there. Groups like that. But those were big deals back then. Ice cream socials that Mr. Sutherland with the food services back then, he would do ice cream socials for us. Bonfires. We had bonfires. I remember clearly that the treasurer at that time, and I forget the young man's name, he had one job. He was supposed to arrange for the logs for the bonfire. We're there. Students were coming, and we were ready for a bonfire. No logs, no wood. So Mr. Sutherland, he saved the day a gazillion times back then, and that was when we had like Kyle and Bernie. Was it ARA Foods or? Yeah, Mr. Sutherland. I'll be back, Bryant. Next thing we know, a little bit later, he pulls up in his pickup truck with a ton of wood. So we had our bonfire, and everything was cool. So things like that allowed us. That allowed us all to get together and be together. I enjoyed representing Elon at student government, national student government conventions. Had the opportunity to go to one in Colorado at the University of Colorado at Boulder. After that, I applied for every job I could when I left Elon to live out there, but because that's pretty country. Texas, University of Massachusetts at Amherst, National Student Government Conventions. I represented us along with some professors. Bill Sharp, coordinator of student activities. Dean Long, I think he went. Dr. Pace. We went out to a conference, and I think it was a church-affiliated school conference. It was at Fisk University, and when it was fun. It was informative. I remember meeting, and this is a good story. I tell this every time. We go there and listen to speakers, and we get into our groups. And of course, when we first get there, we were staying in the newly renovated Maxwell House Hotel. Which was real cool for a 19, 20-year-old. And I'm there with professors, and I'm thinking maybe I shouldn't be in this bar with people that I look up to back on campus. But the people were interesting. It was just really neat, and the history or the feeling of being on a HBCU. Fisk University. I was in awe. I met. There was a young lady there that would always come to me after conferences, and it's not like I was a perfect 10 on a scale of, but she would always, she asked these, engaging questions. Bryant, can we meet after conference or dinner? And because I'd like to discuss your essence of being. and I'm what? your essence of being. So after I tell the story to Mr. Sharp, and he's cracking up. Like, Bryant, are you going to go and discuss your essence of being? So we, the young lady and I, we did talk a lot. She was a really intelligent young lady, and I won't even go beyond that because she was attractive too. But she was really smart. She was asking questions that I don't think I was even smart enough to answer. So she gave me the benefit of the doubt. But I did learn later on that what she meant was, it was interesting to her. She was from I can't tell you that one yet. I can't tell you that yet. But she was from an HBCU, and it was interesting to her that, now, how are you, a black male student body president at a predominantly white school in the South? And I mean, I had no real answer for her, other than, the luck of the draw. It was what I enjoyed doing. I took the chance, and people had the confidence in me. That was the intellectual answer, and I'm going to stick with that one. But fast forward to the conference being over, and I get back to Elon. Of course, Mr. Sharp and Dean Long and Dr. Pace, they're just dying messing with me, and I didn't know what to say other than to just take the verbal abuse or the funning. So I get back to Elon, and I get back around my athlete community, Bryant, Bernie, and Kyle Wills back there, Doggett, Hahn, and EF, and Walker. And I get back to them, and I guess I had been studying in the library. And I go back to Carolina Dorm or wherever we were, and I told them, you guys are not going to believe this. This young lady I met at Fisk, she was really smart, too smart for me. She was really attractive, wanted to know my essence of being. And look, she is Miss freaking Dillard University. She was in the Ebony magazine, Campus Queen edition. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh. But these gentlemen were, yeah, right, Colson. Yeah, okay, yeah, okay, yeah. Of course we believe you, Bryant. Yeah. But, I did get the opportunity to go to the Grand Ole Opry. I sat there with the professors, and it's always a long show, and your buns get all tired, but I tried to act like I was happy because I wanted to hang out with them. But that was an interesting outing, and I had to tell that story, try to sneak it in somewhere. But now, my essence of being, fast forward to now, if ever I mention my daughters at any time, at any outing, to anybody, those three young ladies are my essence of being.
What
So
a
I did
great
it.
answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the question, and I hope I touched on it somewhere.
Yes, well, that is all the time we have for the questions, but I want to thank you so much for taking this time out to interview.
Thank you all.